everyone, welcome to lesson 4 for computer graphics. Today we're actually starting our second project and it is called basic gameplay or unit. And so today we'll be focusing on player position. So just to recap some things that we learned from our last unit, we learned how to import assets, we learned how to add a scene, then we learned how to add objects to the scene. So in this case, this would be like our car and our obstacles that we added. Then we also learned how to reposition those objects in the scene, and we used the perspectives, adjusting the XYZ direction. We worked with the camera, changing the angle of the camera to kind of show us what we wanted to see. And then we finally started using scripts where we added components to our game objects. And just to recap, scripts, you can add your own components for game objects using them. They allow you to, trigger game events, modify components, the properties of certain components, and respond to user input. And they are coded in C. And so C#. So some projects we'll be working on with this unit is obviously our basic gameplay project. And then there's also another challenge if you want to try that out. It's called Play Fetch, and there'll be more information about it in our future lessons. And of course, you can always do your own solo exploration. So let's get started. So for this project, you will need to go to the Unity Learn platform and you will need to create a new project, which we worked with before, so I won't show that. And then you will have to download the starter files for prototype 2 and import the Unity package into your project. And again, they offer you links here, but I already did this, but just to show you, after you download the prototype 2 starter files, you'll go to Assets, you'll go to Import Package, Custom Package, and it should open up your folder and you can just add your package. And then you'll see in your project window all the different like scenes and stuff. So I just opened up the prototype 2 scene, and then we're just going to delete our sample scene. And then if you want, you can change your layout if you want to like custom or your own or default, which is this layout, which I think everyone remembers. Yep. So now we're going to start adding stuff to our scene. So if you want to like change the material, I think this is the material we have right now. Yeah. This is the material we have now. But if you want like a different grass or setting, you can go to course library and you can go to materials. And there are like different materials here. Again, these are just some things you can play around with. It's going to take a minute to load. But yeah, you can kind of see like the preview here. But yeah, I'm going to just stick with this one. But now you'll want to drag one human. So again, in the assets folder, you'll see that in the course library. So you'll add one human. We want to add 3 animals and a food object into our. I'm just going to put the humans. Okay. Back here. I'm literally just going to drag a random one. And then I'm going to go to animals. And then I'm just going to do the same thing. Drag a people. Drag a chicken. And then yeah, and as you can as you can see, they're kind of like in our hierarchy, if you guys remember. But yeah. And then lastly, food. You just need one food item. I'm going to do, let me do pizza. It's really tiny, but yeah, it's there. Yeah, so now we're just gonna like do the renaming. we're going to rename our human player, and then you can rename the other ones, and we're basically just going to adjust them. Okay, so we're going to now just adjust the perspective so we can see it, but just for I'm going to move the game perspective down and move this to the side. There we go. Just so I can kind of see what the player would be seeing. Move that over to, okay. And then you kind of want like the top-down perspective. So I again click the Y on the top. And now I can move the players and just adjust them. Readjust my, yeah, so you're basically kind of just like moving the player and everything, just kind of adjusting it. So you want the player in the back, and then you want the three animals. That's the pizza. So let me just move that. I'm kind of just using these lines as like guidelines for me. And then obviously like my three characters are like kind of small, so I'm just gonna make them bigger. So I'm gonna make them bigger to see how. That is picked up. Let me see what they did for the deer. Okay, they did 11. Where did my dog go? Oh, whoops. Yeah. So again, I'm just going to the scale part and the inspector to kind of change the size. I still feel like that's a little small. Let me do 15. Yeah, just so we can see them, obviously. Yeah, and you want to make sure you adjust all of them. Well, never mind. Okay. Chicken's so big. I don't know if they're supposed to be all the same size, but you know, it is what it is. Same thing with the pizza. I'm kind of just gonna make it bigger just so I can see it. There we go. And now you kind of want to move the pizza. And let me just okay. You kind of want to move the pizza, whoops. Between like your human and the animals. So that's kind of the perspective we are in right now. So this is kind of like the layout you want. You can obviously, it doesn't have to be exactly like this, but you know what you want. Now we can see that we can clearly see all our objects from above, and yeah, so. So our next step is to get the user's horizontal input. So in our assets folder, so let's see here. We're gonna create a scripts folder and then add a player control script inside. So I'm just gonna right click, create folder, and I'm just gonna name it script. And then in the scripts folder, I'm gonna create a script and call it player. And now we want to attach it to our player. And I'm just going to add the player controller script. I'm trying to clear this window. There we go. Yeah. So again, I just clicked on the player, I scrolled down, clicked add component, and then you can go to scripts, and then you'll just add the script that you created. Now we're going to open the file. So above, we're going to declare a new public float variable. So public, I'm going to call it. And then in our update function, we're going to set horizontal input to get the input from the horizontal axis. So input get axis, and then in parentheses, in quotations. Oops. Make sure to add those semicolons after. And we're just going to save it. Yeah, and you can see it in the inspector that it is there. So now we want to use the horizontal input to translate the player left and right. So in the same script, so you're just going to go back to your Visual Studio. We're going to declare another public float variable called speed. And we're going to set it to 10. And since it's a float, we put the F after. And then in our update function, again, we're just going to translate the player side to side based on the horizontal input and the speed. So transform. Delta time times speed. So now after this, we want to kind of prevent the player from going off the side of the screen with an if-then statement. So in our update function, we're going to now write if-then statement. So if square position x, which is our horizontal position, is less than negative 10. Transform position to So basically we want to set the player's position to its current position, but with a fixed X location. So if it goes up the screen, same position, but we want to kind of move it back. So new vector 3, 10, transform position dot y, and then transform position. Now let's save it and let's run it to see how it works. So again, let's make sure our code is there. Display. So now we can see that it says there's an error, but the reason is because the variables I created are outside the class. Remember, our functions are in the class. So if you want to use the variables, they have to be in the class. I'm just going to copy them in the class. So make sure you kind of fix that too. You want the variables to be in the class because we're using them in these functions. Now let's save it. Save it one time. Perfect. As you can see, the error went. Now let's run it. And now I'm using my left arrow. And as you can see, it doesn't go further than that. So now we only did it for the left side. So obviously if I go right, it's just gonna go off the screen as you can see. But for the left side, it stops at that value. So now what we want to do is repeat the same process, the if statement, for the right side. I'm just gonna move these lines just above just to make it look cleaner. And yeah, now we're just gonna repeat it for the right side. So if transform dot position dot x is greater than 10, then you want to transform position vector 3 10 comma transform 1. Save it. All right, now let's run it again. And there we go. Now left side again, it stops at that value. And this time right side, it stops at that value. Perfect. Now the last thing we can do is go back to our code and notice how we made these -10 and then 10. Obviously this doesn't have to be a specific value, so if you ever want to change it, you don't want to go back into the code, find all the lines with the values and change it. So instead you can create a variable. So we're going to create a public float and we can call it x range because we're only working with the horizontal axis right now. And we can just call it 10, right? That's the value we used right now. And here it's -10, so you just make it negative x range because that's what we called it. And then here we can just call it x range. And then again here we can just change it to x range or negative x range. So this kind of just again just cleaning up our code and again just working with variables. Save that, go back to our Unity, make sure there are no errors. And let's just do it one more time. Yeah, so that's it for the part 1 of this project. So again, we learned how the player can move left and right based on the user's left and right key presses. And then again, we made sure that the player could not leave the play area on either side. And then we also learned how to adjust objects, using the scale method. So going to object, going into the inspector or in the inspector and transform, you see the scale and you can change the X, Y, and Z. We've worked with if statements and then the greater than and less than operators. And yeah, so in the next lesson, we'll learn how to create and throw endless amounts of food to feed our animals.